I really like this MP that I'm about to introduce you to. She's got a Clean Up Politics Act, and it's about stopping lobbyists come in, and it also has transparency. So if a politician does meet with the lobbyist, you can have a look and see who they're talking to that might sway how they're pitching things when they're going around and being political. Now, I voted independent in the last election. I'm probably going to be voting independent for the rest of my life, to be honest, because I'm kind of tired of Labor, Liberal and the Greens, kind of bitch fighting it out all the time. And the only reason why Albanese raised his emissions target is because it was, we had a lot more independents in Parliament, and she's one of them. So I really like the bill that she's trying to introduce. I think it would stop corruption and this whole bro club that's happening in politics. Still, it's boring. Anyway, we need change to happen faster, and I think that will happen when you have a lot less of these big industries like the supermarkets and mining coming in and just greasing these guys with money to get them to push things through, give them tenders that 1.8 billion one that, the leader of the opposition did, which it's not even a company. I don't even know how that's possible. How can... that makes no sense unless there's a whole lot of everybody's in on it thing. We've got everything we need to transition to a circular economy faster. The only problem we have is lobbyists in politics and politicians not politicking properly. So, you have more power than you realise, and they're afraid of you figuring that out. So vote with your dollar, vote with your attention, and vote independent, because I think they're the real ruckus makers, because Labor, Liberal and Greens just haven't been able to move the needle fast enough, and we need it to be moved really fast. And we also need, a little bit of respect for the OGs in sustainability who have been since the 70s designing solutions. So, if you're a politician and you're watching this, or you've got VC funding, please don't just always look at who's the new shiny that's going on. We need reduce and we need redesign across everything, including our politics.
I'm new to politics, and what's really struck me is just how much influence lobbyists have. A lot of people don't realise that the big mining companies, supermarkets, big tobacco spend millions of dollars trying to get in front of ministers. Here's how they do it. Step one, they offer politicians high-paying lobbyist jobs the moment that they leave Parliament. For instance, 5 resources ministers since 2001 have gone on to work for big mining companies. These companies hire former politicians because they have personal relationships with other politicians, which helps them get what they want. Step 2, lobbyists give gifts to politicians, everything from tickets to the footy to lavish dinners. They wouldn't spend that money on politicians if it didn't help them get what they want. Step 3, they keep their meetings with politicians secret. Other countries, like Canada and New Zealand, require ministers to publish their diaries so that we can see who they're meeting with and why. Not Australia. That's why I'm trying to get my Clean Up Politics Act passed. It would shine a light on lobbyists in this country. Specifically, it would stop politicians from working as lobbyists as soon as they leave government, and it will help us know which ministers are meeting with which companies. The major parties aren't supporting it as yet, but if we keep up the pressure, they'll have no choice about supporting this bill. If you want to help me clean up politics, sign the petition in my bio.
So, Scott Morrison's taken a new job. I think he should be banned from it. The former Prime Minister has quit Parliament and taken a job with a defence firm, which is an investor in AUKUS, which was one of Morrison's key policies. This is the issue. Scott Morrison committed $368 billion of Australian money to AUKUS, and now he's using his insider contacts and knowledge to help a private firm profit from that money. No politician should be able to quit politics and move straight into an industry over which they have recently held political sway. The problem is that politicians do it all the time, and neither of the major parties wants to talk about it because it's not in their personal interest to do so. I'm an independent and I'm really happy to talk about this. In fact, it's something that I'm really keen to do. I've introduced my Clean Up Politics Act to stop politicians from undermining our democracy. My Clean Up Politics Act would have stopped Scott Morrison from getting this job. If you want to help me clean up politics in this country, it's simple. Get your friends and family to sign up to my Clean Up Politics Act. Together we can act to improve the democratic process in Australia.
Guess who paid more tax on their income last year? You or your gas company? There's a good chance it's you. Most fossil fuel multinationals in Australia paid zero company tax between 2014 and 2020. We have the balance completely wrong when the Australian government collects more money from HEX debts than it does from taxing the income of gas multinationals. Australia is very good at taxing small businesses and families, but it's terrible at taxing multinational fossil fuel companies. Almost every other country with large coal and gas industries does that better than us. It's not rocket science. It's not even brain surgery. We need to strengthen the petroleum resources rent tax, and we need to take that money and put it into targeted relief to help everyday Australians get through this cost of living crisis. Cheaper power, more housing, childcare, aged care. Major parties listen more to fossil fuel companies than they do to everyday Australians. They care more about the next election than the next generation. It's time to reset politics in this country so that it's about people, not about political parties. And it's about making sure that we tax multinational corporations properly. That's one of the first steps to getting there.
So I've been in Parliament for just over a year now, and this has to be one of the biggest challenges that the government has faced. They're not backing down from one of the most expensive policies, which could very well make it difficult for those struggling to pay their rent or pay for their shopping, even though they know that we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis. The policy is the Stage 3 tax cuts. Politicians really don't want to talk about them, but we need to. There's a few problems with them. Obviously, we're in a cost of living crisis, and we absolutely need to do what we can to help people pay their rent and pay for their shopping. These Stage 3 tax cuts will not do that. Most of the benefits go to the highest income earners, while those who are struggling the most get the least. That's only the start of the problems. Some of the country's leading economists have said that Stage 3 is going to make the cost of living crisis worse. The policy will put tens of billions of dollars back into the economy, which will most likely increase inflation, which will increase interest rates, make everything else more expensive. And it's just not what we should be spending $313 billion on right now. We have a housing crisis. So many young people won't be able to afford their next rent increase. Homelessness is rising. By just making Stage 3 a bit fairer, we could double the Commonwealth rent assistance, and we could build 100,000 more homes over the next 10 years. I'd choose action on the housing crisis over the Stage 3 tax cuts any day of the week. Let me know what you think, or better yet, let your friends and family know that you want fairer Stage 3 tax cuts. We need to put pressure on the government. Let's get this done.
We should re-look at the Stage 3 tax cuts, and that we should, as a country, be mature enough to look at something which was legislated in 2019, before the pandemic, before the current cost of living crisis, before the crisis of housing affordability and availability, and see if it's still fit for purpose, and have the maturity as a political body to make changes to something which is no longer in the country's best interests. The proposal I've put out recently looked at a really modest change to the Stage 3 cuts to make them a bit more fair, to keep the 37% bracket, which would generate $8 billion a year. With $8 billion, we could double the Commonwealth rental assistance payment. Which is 1.5 million people who are really struggling to pay their rent, could have significant benefit from that. And we'd have $3 billion left over, with which we could build 100,000 homes over 10 years. I think it is time for us to look at whether or not the Stage 3 tax cuts are in the country's best interests. In their current form, I don't feel that they are.
Got some really exciting breaking news. If you care about integrity in politics, listen to this. So I'm a federal MP, and I introduced my first private member's bill last week, the Clean Up Politics Act. I introduced it because of my experience in politics so far. I've been stunned by how much influence lobbyists have over the decisions that government make. Lobbyists for fossil fuel industries, for gambling, for vaping, for the supermarkets, for Qantas and for Virgin. There are 15 lobbyists for every politician. They have free rein to walk the halls of Parliament House, knocking on doors and talking to people. They know how to wield influence and how to influence decisions that the government makes. So I introduced my first bill, and the response was fantastic. We've had thousands of people writing to their members of Parliament, urging them to get on board and to support the bill. Today we found out that the pressure is starting to work. The major parties won't support this bill unless they're forced to, unless they hear from their constituents that this really matters. Today, for the first time, we saw evidence that that pressure is really beginning to have an effect. The Senate has just set up an inquiry to look at all of the issues that I've been raising in my bill. This is fantastic news. It means that for the first time in years, we'll be having really significant conversations about these issues in Parliament. Congratulations to Senator David Pocock for really picking up on this issue and pushing it in the Senate. If you haven't signed the petition, please sign it. The link is in my bio. If we keep the pressure on, we will get this act passed. I'll keep you up to date. Thanks for your support.